you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me.
Do you feel it?
Yes, we do.
A worldwide awakening is upon us. Welcome to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Where we explore topics such as UFOs, aliens, banned medical cures, as well as classified secret knowledge. Come question your holographic existence. Share experiences from the other side. This is a show that will expand your mind as we decrypt the symbolic messages locked away deep within your DNA. And now, your guides for this magical journey. The hosts of the Universal Consciousness Show, Avi Nast and Diana Seraphim.
Hello, everybody. You are listening to the show for the Thinking Global Citizen. My name is Agi and I'm one of the hosts, and Diana, my co-host, is over in Germany. Hello, Diana.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, and before I introduce the guest that we have today, I want to tell you how you can connect with us also. You can visit us on our website at the universal-consciousness-show.com, and we are on YouTube with the same name. And while you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel if you like what you hear. And you know how it works. Click on that little black bell next to the red subscribe button, because then you get the notifications when new shows are coming out. So for those of you that like to hear this show again, you can go to our website, universal-consciousness-show.com, or YouTube. And of course, we are also on kcorradio.com in the archives. And we are traveling all around the different medias out there. We're on Twitter, iTunes, TuneIn, Alexa, Facebook, and a few other places where we go. So if you are listening to KCOR Radio right now, then there is this wonderful feature right down at the bottom of the page. It's called a donate button. And if you like what you hear, we would love for you also to show your gratitude this way and help us out, and tell us, by sending us a little donation, you tell us that we are doing the right thing and we should continue doing this. So thank you very much if you can. If you can't, that is perfectly all right. We love you. We are glad you're here listening. So that is the housekeeping. I guess we're done with that now. So I want to introduce the guest to you. And we have a wonderful guest named Greg Little. Dr. Greg Little has an MS in psychology and doctorate in counseling and educational psychology. And he's also the author and co-author of over 60 books. Man, oh man, that's more than one book a year. Gosh, he must have been working 38 hours a day, not counting the overtime. And he has been featured in 14 documentaries on the History Channel, History 2, Discovery, Discovery Kids, Vision TV, BBC Television, and the Learning Channel, National Geographic, Sci-Fi, MSNBC, and the Weather Channel. And I probably forgot one. Yeah, I did actually. UFO TV. I saw the documentary he did on Atlantis. And when he was down in the Caribbean, he was diving there and he found some amazing structures on the bottom of the ocean. I'd really like for him to mention something about that also. Since 1982, has been active in writing about the Native Americans' grave mounds and the spiritual practices that they had. He also investigated many of the ancient sites in Central America and is the author of the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Native American Indian Mounds and Earthworks. That was the title of it. And also The Paths of Soul. And that speaks of the mysterious symbols found on ancient mounds describing death rituals and their where their spirits go after they drop the body. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be good. And he studied the readings of Edgar Cayce, and I really like him to talk about that also. And the Bermuda Triangle and things like that. So welcome to the show, Greg.
Well, thank you. Hi, Augie, and hi, Diana.
Hello. Hello,
it's a-
Dr. Greg. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being with us today. Just to start with, can you tell us, please, in a squeezed story, what was the turning point in your life that put you on this path from psychology to this research? So, how did it all begin for you?
Oh my. Okay, so let's see. I am still active. My real field, my professional field, is criminal psychology. I was trained initially in psychopharmacology, and that is the study of how drugs work in the brain. And people that are into that field are always interested in unusual experiences, be they supernatural experiences, dreams, and so on, because we know drugs affect the brain and can produce experiences that are similar to psychic experiences. So, in the course of that, I got interested in people who had reported having strange life-altering experiences, such as Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce came up real early in my research, and I got very interested in where in the world this guy got his ability from. In particular, his health readings. Cayce was a psychic. He's considered the most famous psychic in America. He's also known in the medical field as the father of holistic health. So I began looking at some of Cayce's readings, health readings in particular, with the real goal of trying to understand where in the world his abilities were coming from. So that's kind of a summary of that. When I started looking at it, I got more and more interested in all of his other readings. Cayce gave readings about health. He gave, well, unexpectedly, he didn't expect this, but eventually reincarnation popped up in his psychic readings. But most of his readings, about 2/3, were about health. And the interesting thing about Cayce is that of psychics, of all the psychics who have ever been, virtually everything Cayce said during a psychic reading was written down and recorded. So we can go back and look at them and check up to see how accurate they were. And that's actually why the American Medical Association dubbed him the father of holistic health. In articles published in medical journals, they found that at least 85 to roughly 88% of Cayce's health readings were accurate. That doesn't mean the other readings were inaccurate. Most of the time, the ones that they couldn't verify as accurate, they were not able to follow up and find out if, in fact, his remedies worked. So I got interested because of strange experiences. That's really the big turning point.
Yeah, but I understand also Edgar Cayce had a mystical experience in his very early age where put him on his path.
Yes, age 13, which is the same age Joan of Arc had her life-altering experience.
Yeah.
Cayce was a Christian, a very devout Christian. At age 13, he was reading the Bible for the 13th time. He had decided to read the Bible through 1 year for each year of his life. So he caught up at age 13, and he was reading the story of Manoah in the woods near the farm where he lived in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And the story of Manoah is about a visitation of an angel, which is quite a coincidence because as Cayce was reading this story in the Bible in the woods, an angel suddenly appeared to him. He was shocked. He looked up. It was a female angel. And she said, "What would you most like to do with your life? What do you want to do?" And without any hesitation at all, Cayce said, "Well, I'd like to help people, especially children." And the angel said, "It'll be yours," and disappeared. Edgar ran home, told his mother about it. She told him that maybe it meant he would be a doctor, but that he should not talk about that experience. And that actually was documented some years later by Cayce's biographers. There were several people who wrote biographies about Cayce. But that was the big experience he had that changed everything. Before that, he actually would see, literally, he reported seeing dead people after his grandfather died falling from a horse. And he saw that happen. He was a very young child, but he saw his grandfather's spirit get up after the body had died, and he began seeing other deceased people when he was a child, which he reported. He saw the little people. Hopkinsville, Kentucky, by the way, is the site of the Kelly Hopkinsville Goblin UFO case from 1955, and the Cayce farm was actually very close to where that other case occurred, near Kelly and Hopkinsville in Kentucky. But so it's kind of an enchanted area to begin with. But that's sort of a thumbnail of Cayce.
Yeah, Central America like that. There's a lot of places like that where there are mystical experiences, and in fact, they still have those experiences in places in the Midwest like that.
There's actually a series now called Hellier. It's spelled Hellier. It's available for free on YouTube, and they really are looking in this same area and investigating strange experiences that they have had filming. So yes, it still is a real hotbed of a lot of strange things. There are a lot of people there who have, at least say they have psychic ability. I say that because I haven't investigated any of them, but I can't tell you that they don't have it either. I don't really know.
Yeah. And now Edgar Cayce, he just said 80 or 60 to 80% was about health, but there were some really strange ones also.
Yes.
Especially about Atlantis and life after death. And there were some, let's stay with Cayce for a little bit because this is getting good.
Okay. Well, Cayce, really, it started around 1922. Cayce was born in 1877. He began doing all of this psychic stuff around the age of 23. And he was hypnotized to begin with at age 23 by a stage hypnotist. And they discovered that under this type of hypnosis, although he later used self-hypnosis, he was able to be, he was totally unconscious and unaware of what was going on and what he said. That's actually why they started recording it. He wanted to know what in the world he was saying when he was in these trances. So they found that he was able to lay there. He became a sort of psychic diagnostician in that he could scan an individual's body and he could see what the problems were with health. And then in the 1920s, they began doing what's called a life reading. And in these life readings, it began talking about the individual's health, but also their past lives and things that they had done that influenced their present life. So what happened in a past life to influence your present life? That's what they were about. In the course of those, suddenly this ancient history popped out, a history of the ancient world that goes back literally millions of years. The most famous part of Cayce's readings, of course, involved the continent of Atlantis. Unlike Plato, Cayce gave a beginning date. If you actually read Plato's story of Atlantis, it does talk about how it started, but it doesn't tell you when it started. Plato's story simply says Poseidon formed this island, and he married the daughter of a human couple, and he built the center city of Atlantis for them to live at. That was really the start of it. But Plato didn't give us a date. Cayce said it started around 210,000 years ago, and he said it started in a very large island, which eventually broke up, but it was an island empire that extended from the Caribbean, what we would today call the Bahamas, which was once called the British Indies, but it's the Bahamas, It would include Cuba, all the other islands there, extending all the way over to the Mediterranean, to the Straits of Gibraltar or the Pillars of Hercules. So
Yeah.
Cayce said there was this island empire there that started around 210,000 BC. It reached some real technological heights. And he gave real dates and all this. He said in 50,000 BC, there was a meeting that was held, and it was to deal with these huge, very dangerous animals that were overrunning parts of the world. And so all these people gathered together, and they decided that they would literally destroy most of these large animals, which in terms of real history, up until roughly 10,000 BC, the Americas and actually the Caribbean and South America were overrun with very large animals, everything from saber-toothed tigers to giant ground sloth to not just buffalo, but huge, huge bears. We had loads of other animals, woolly mammoths, mastodons, and it was a very dangerous world. So according to Cayce, they came up with a plan to literally ignite gas pockets. And when they did that in 50,000 BC, it split up the islands. It destroyed quite a bit of the islands, and it broke Atlantis into 5 big islands. But they recovered from that, and they rebuilt. And by 28,000 BC, again, he gave all these dates, they had not only rebuilt themselves, but they had reached a technology to where they had, and when I say technology, people think computers and they think electricity, but think of a blimp, think of a dirigible, think of some sort of airship that might have been created in the 1800s or something. That is what I believe most of their technology was. But Cayce also said that they had developed hot air balloons, and they had developed a way to use large crystals, mainly huge quartz crystals, to focus the rays of the sun, to create steam, to create heat, to run equipment. But they were also using these crystals for communication, which interestingly, crystal radios, that's exactly what they did. They used the vibrations of crystals, and they could tune them to various frequencies.
Yep.
So in 28,000 BC, there was another disaster that occurred, and it broke the islands up even more. And that was caused by these crystals being mistuned, according to Cayce. So sometime around 10,500 BC, the priests of Atlantis became aware, and the readings make it seem as if it was an extraterrestrial source that told the priests this, but they were told that Atlantis was going to be completely destroyed by something, and that they needed to make a plan, and the plan was to preserve the records of humanity in a medium that could not be easily destroyed, to make 3 sets of these records, and to place these records into 3 very different places in the world, so that after Atlantis was destroyed and after civilization went through this disaster, the actual history of the world would remain and someday could be found. Cayce called it the Hall of Records. Again, there's 3 of those. The most famous one, the one that almost everybody has heard about, is in Egypt. Supposedly it's under the right paw of the Sphinx. People have been looking for that for a long, long time.
And they have actually found it, but they're not talking because they don't want people to know what's in there.
Well, that is very possible.
Yeah.
That is definitely possible. We know that under the right paw of the Sphinx, there actually is a chamber of some kind. The Egyptian authorities say that it's a kind of a natural crevice down there, but that's all a long story. Andrew Collins knows a great deal about that because he's been under the Giza Plateau in cave systems there. You need to get him on sometime to talk about that. The second Hall of Records, I know we got a break coming up. So again, there's 3 Hall of Records. First one in Egypt. The second one, Cayce said, was in the Bahamas He didn't call it the Bahamas at the time because it was not a country, but he said it was near Bimini. But he said it was a temple that was built and is now underwater. We believe we may have found that. That's where I know you want to go with this. The third Hall of Records, he said, was in the Yucatan Peninsula. He said it's in the Yucatan. And this was in the I believe it was 1933 when he gave this reading. And he said that the University of Pennsylvania was there at that moment. He was giving the reading that they had collected a number of artifacts and they were going to send them to the Museum of the University of Pennsylvania. That is what the book, The Lost Hall of Records, is about. And that book was just re-released last week. It came out in 2000, was a bestseller. Since that book came out, my wife and I had been to this site in Guatemala. It's called Piedras Negras. Very dangerous trip that we took, and actually kind of stupid in ways. But that book has been updated a bit with a lot of new pictures in it. So there's 3 Hall of Records. We have been involved in trying to find all 3. But what we're mainly known for is looking in the Bahamas. And we have done that a lot.
Boy, oh boy. Now, the place down in the Yucatan where this was found, that is not communicated very much, is it?
No, it's not. That's why the book even calls it the Lost Hall of Records.
Yeah.
This place has been very difficult to get to. It is a site called Piedras Negras. We were there. It took us, it was a very strenuous trip to get there. While we were there, we saw drug runners going up the river that's there. It's called the Usumacinta River. The Usumacinta is a very fast-moving river. It flows to the Gulf of Mexico. It divides Mexico from Guatemala. And while we were there, we saw boatloads of people that were drug traffickers that were making their way from South America to the Gulf, and then boats would bring drugs over, and we saw them with guns on them. And after we were there, an odd thing occurred. The drug runners took over the site of Piedras Negras, even putting machine gun embankments into the pyramids that are at Piedras Negras. It's an incredible site. Again, that book's called The Lost Hall of Records. I didn't write that book. That is a book by my wife, who is the chairperson of the board of trustees of the ARE, the Cayce organization. So we're both still heavily involved with the Cayce organization. But anyway, there has been a lot done on all 3 Hall of Records. We were the last ones to go and try to find what was at Piedras Negras. We did find some things where we believe it probably is. We had talked to Guatemalan archaeologists who had actually worked at the site some years before we were there, and they agreed there is some sort of an underground chamber under a very prominent pyramid at the site, but it's not accessible easily.
Wow. I see we are coming up against the break, and hold that thought, because when we come back, I want you probably don't know a lot, but what do you hypothesize about what is in those records and those rooms? And I wanted you maybe just imagine what could be there also. So let's go to the break now, and we will come back talking with Greg Little about the mysteries of the Americas for now.
You're listening to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly connection to the truth.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Share your knowledge by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers find us on Skype at KCOR Radio. It's time to abandon your fear and question what you think you know.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
More awakening awaits.
After this, after this, after this, after this, after this, after this.
One of the planet's most powerful antioxidant products is here for you to enjoy. Chaga mushroom tea. This tea has been used as a potent natural health solution for thousands of years. In fact, the Chinese call it king of the herbs. The health value alone is worth a look, as Chaga mushroom tea packs a punch with pure vitality and smooth energy. It's 100% wild crafted, safe, and effective. Get it now at arcticchaga.com. That's ARCTICCHAGA.com, or call 916-969-2678. That's 916-969-2678. Chaga Mushroom Tea.
Chaga mushroom tea.
Order your supply today.
Hello, KCOR listeners. Lorian Fenton here from the Fenton Files to tell you how to watch UFOCon 2020, which was held right before the virus scare in shelter-in-place. It was a conference like no other, so don't miss out on the specially priced on-demand replay of what is already the most talked-about conference of 2020. Visit UFOCon2020.com. That's UFOCon2020.com.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
It's showtime!
Here we go, world.
You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Your base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots to a higher consciousness. This is the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Now the world will begin hearing us.
Share your knowledge by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
It's as simple as that.
Find us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us on the live chat at KCORradio.com. Back to your enlightened hosts, Agi Nost and Diana Serafin.
Hello, hello. We are back, the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Greg Little. And we're talking about, what should we call it? In general terms, maybe the mysteries of America for right now, Atlantis, and also when Atlantis went down, there were 3 halls of records that was placed, and before the break we were talking about what might be in those, and this is getting really interesting. So for those of you that want to listen to this show again, you could go to universal-consciousness-show.com, and also YouTube with the same name, and also KCORradio.com. In the archives we will have the show there also. And of course, also if you are on the YouTube, subscribe to our channel, because then also click the bell next to it so you can get notifications and And when new shows coming out, you'll be told. So we were talking before the show, Greg, about what might be in those records, the Hall of Records that the Atlanteans placed 3 places in the world.
Yeah. Well, Cayce was asked in one of his readings what was in the Hall of Records. And he said that all 3 had the same things, just duplicates, but there were 32 stone tablets. And on those 32 stone tablets, it had a type of, he didn't call it hieroglyphics, but he said it was a type of writing which had become basically extinct, and it would take a while for them to figure out how to translate it. But he said they were written on all sides, and both front and back and along the sides, the edges of it. So 32 stone tablets. He said there were some examples of weapons. He said that there were some mummies that had been placed in there. I would assume for later DNA analysis or analysis by physical anthropologists. He said there were some examples of clothing and other articles, almost like a museum. But the 32 stone tablets had the history of Atlantis in it, the history of humankind, what had happened on Atlantis, what actually happened. Cayce gave us some of the story. It's a split between 2 very different groups of people holding different philosophies of life. He called one of them the children of the law of one, and the other one he called the sons of Belial. We can get into that in a bit, but this history of Atlantis also had instructions written down for how they had taken this firestone or crystal and how they used it to communicate with higher spheres, other spheres of consciousness, and then how they turned it into a different kind of communication device for humans to communicate, and finally how it was turned into a weapon. All of that is what is on those 32 stone tablets. But that's basically what's in it. Again, a history of humanity, their technology, some of their philosophy and beliefs, and then enough physical evidence that anthropologists or geneticists or whoever could go in and analyze it and figure out a great deal about our past. So that's what's in the 3 Hall of Records.
Wow. Yeah. And I guess they used a language that has been abolished then.
Well, it would have disappeared with them, yes. And of course, there are lots of different languages in the ancient world. Cayce did talk about before Atlantis was destroyed, before it was destroyed in 28,000 BC, groups of Atlanteans went other places around the world to flee that destruction. And before it was finally destroyed in 10,000 BC, and the main city and the main islands were all flooded, he said that Atlanteans went to areas in South America, very specific areas. Some of them went to the Yucatan. The elite of the Atlanteans, according to Cayce, and he also called them the Red Race. The Atlanteans were the Red Race. He said that the elite went to the northeast of the United States and became the Iroquois tribe. And you're not saying a word now. I understand. Cayce is the only psychic that I know of, and the only person who ever gave a history of Atlantis, who said that the Native American Indians, particularly those of the Northeast, they're not the same as the Southwestern Indians. Those are different. They have a different genetics and a different heritage. But the Native Americans in the Northeast, Cayce said, were the pure-blood Atlanteans. Some of them also went over to the Pyrenees Mountains, where they probably became the Basque.
Yep.
Others of them went to the Gobi Desert. He mentioned that, and he also mentioned Egypt. And Cayce said that when the Hall of Records was placed in Egypt in 10,000 BC, There was a priest there. According to Cayce, this priest put the capstone on the pyramid in 10,000 BC and sealed the records then. And of course, mainstream archaeology tells us that the pyramids nor the Sphinx were built in 10,000 BC, that they were built, according to mainstream archaeology, around 3,200 BC, which would be vastly different.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When you mentioned the Basque, that kind of makes sense, actually, because I know a little bit about the Basque. They have a language that has absolutely no similarities to any other language.
You're right. I'm aware of that. It's very strange. Some of the Basque language has some of the words, not many, but some of the words are similar to some Native American languages, particularly not the Algonquins, but the pure Iroquois language, which that would be the Seneca. I'm part Seneca. That's why I'm very much partly why I'm interested in Native American stuff so much. Cayce also talked about Native Americans and where they came from. But and during our little break, we were talking about the validity of what Cayce said. And Cayce just didn't give strange histories of the ancient world. Cayce gave predictions. And some of those allow us to see that the man actually had a lot of validity in these things, such as I mentioned to you that the stock market crash of 1929. Cayce actually talked about that in 1925. He told a physician who was asking him about the stock market. Again, this is in a psychic reading. Cayce said that that this guy would make a lot of money in the stock market up till 1929, but he had to be very cautious then and get his money out. And he said there would be adverse forces coming into play. And then in March of 1929, 6 months before the stock market crashed, he told a New York stockbroker to get everything out. He said, I've given you this warning. Get it out now or you're going to lose it all. Another example, Cayce said that Japan and Germany were going to join together and go into war together. And he said that in 1935. And most interesting, in the 30s, Cayce gave over 171 readings that talked about this group called the Essenes. And he said that they had written records that they had left behind that had never been found. And it was 2 years after Cayce died that the Dead Sea Scrolls, the written records of the Essenes, were found. So the man was clearly accurate about a lot of things. And to some extent, that's why my wife and I started on that quest to start looking for what in the world is in the Bahamas, and did this Hall of Records in the Bahamas actually exist? And we started that around, I believe it was the problem is I remember the year 2001, and I think it was a couple months later, so it was in January of 2002 when we started our trips going into the Bahamas, which was pretty exhausting, and we did a lot. That's what most of those documentaries that you mentioned were about, because we found a lot of things underwater in the Bahamas.
Do you feel like what you found down in the Caribbean there, even close to Cuba, actually was part of Atlantis?
Well, what I have said is this. There are some things there that are at the 10,000 BC shoreline. What we did was we had our own boat. We spent 25 weeks there over a period of roughly 10 years. And we went out on boats. We used side-scan sonar looking for things. We did aerial surveys looking for things. The aerial surveys wound up having us find 31 crashed planes, including 3 planes that are on the Bermuda Triangle list of planes that vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. So we found 3 of those. But we found 31 planes altogether, several ships. We know we found some old Spanish ships. We found a lot of things like that.
Did you find no treasures in those ships? Huh?
No, we found no treasure. There's a long involved story with that. We have met with Bahamas officials. It is illegal to look for treasure in the Bahamas. We actually reported everything we found to the Bahama officials. If it was archaeological in nature, it was reported. We were there we worked under an archaeological permit. The most interesting things, we did find a lot of underwater structures. Most people know about the Bimini Road. That was not our discovery, but we found something very similar to it in off the island of Andros, which is the largest Bahama island. Not many tourists go there. Very difficult to get to. We found a lot of underwater stone formations. We did find a collapsed temple, which we believe may very well be where the Hall of Records was. That has been named Brown's Ruins. It is about 30 miles south of Bimini. Bimini is about 55 miles due east of Miami, Florida. And it's the closest island, Bahama Island, to the United States. So it's just a 50 to 55 mile jaunt to Bimini. But if you go about 30 miles south, you're getting close to the Gulf. You're near the Gulf Stream. We found this other massive stone structure, which was clearly a temple, which looks as if it was built and an ocean wave or tidal wave came across it and just simply collapsed it and strewn it across the bottom. So what it looks like, it's kind of interesting. This is the last thing that we actually found. When you're going to this area, it's in kind of an elevated area. It's about 20 feet underwater. The bottom is pure white sand. There's nothing growing on the bottom there, just pure white sand. And then you come to this big pile of huge carved stones, some of which have a lot of coral on them. This pile is 500 feet long and 160 feet wide, and it's in a big teardrop shape. That's why we think it was hit by a tsunami. A big wall of water hit it and strewn it across the bottom. But there are these massive flat stones which look like they were in the floor. And when I say massive flat stones, it's a stone that's about a foot thick. It's about 10 to 15 feet long, 8 to 10 feet wide. It is made out of polished schist, schist. It is a green schist that kind of looks purple underwater, and it glows when the sun hits it. We actually had it tested at two major universities, including the prime university in the United States, that their geology department, and they determined that it came from one of two sources. By the way, the Oracle of Delphi in Greece is made out of green schist.
Oh.
Most people don't know that. It's made out of green schist because it polishes really well, and then they would often put a white plaster coating on top of it. But at this place off of Bimini, this collapsed temple has columns, fluted columns laying around it. It has lots of long beams, which a beam would be a solid piece of stone that's maybe 10 to 20 feet long, 1 to 2 feet thick, 1 to 2 feet wide. So I'm calling it a beam. But there's loads of this. It's about 7 to 10 feet high, this massive pile. But it's just pure white sand around it. Then you go on top of this huge, impressive pile of all this stuff, again, in this long teardrop shape that is 500 feet across. And we measured it using side-scan sonar, so our measurements are pretty darn accurate in this. And we also measured the size of the stones. We got samples of the stones, like I said, and sent them off. Since we found this thing, the Bahamas have put a salvage claim on it. It is an archaeological find. It's an official archaeological find, and they're not allowing anybody to go to it for fear that they'll start stealing things from it. Now, we can go to it and film under a film permit, but we're not allowed to go and do anything else at it. So that was the very last thing we found. But at what is called the 10,000 BC shoreline, which is at roughly the 110-foot level. So in 10,000 BC, the sea levels in the Bahamas were 110 feet lower than today, meaning the islands were much, much larger than they are now. Along that that 110-foot level, you can actually see where the old shoreline was, and you can literally see it when you go down there. There is Go ahead.
Where now, 110 feet down, where did all that new water come from?
The melting at the end of the last ice age. You had all of the ice that was mainly in the North Pole area across Canada. It was all the way down into the Americas in 10,000 BC. And at the end of the last ice age, all of that water melted and went into the ocean. In fact, they know also that there was a huge pool of water that was stuck or trapped by this large piece of ice. And it was in northern Canada, and when it broke, it all flooded into the Atlantic Ocean, and it caused a sudden rise of the oceans. That's astonishing when you think about it. But the oceans have actually been as much as 300 feet lower than they are now. At the height of the last ice age, that would have been roughly 30,000 years ago, was the height of the last ice age, and the oceans were 300 feet lower.
Yeah.
So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, when for some of the things that you found down there, it was pretty shallow water. Are you able to see any of that from Google?
Well, no, I have tried. The only thing you can see that we've been able to see from Google Earth, you can't see the Bimini Road. The water is crystal clear there. You can actually see the bottom from a boat. You can see down 100 feet from a boat looking down, unless there's something unusual going on and sand's moving. But most days you can see the bottom when you're standing on a boat looking down 100 feet. But no, you can see a lot on Google Earth close to the islands. You can see a lot of the circular formations that we looked at in Andros. And one of the ways that we found some of the crashed planes was we found spots on Google Earth that we then flew over in a low-flying plane that we had. We get the exact GPS and then go back on a boat. But you can see some of those crashed planes on Google Earth, yes. You can see crashed planes on land on Andros on Google Earth. Many of those we've been to also. Yeah, interesting. And you can spend a lot of time looking at this stuff on Andros Island. Andros is the one to look at, southern Andros, and you'll see a lot of stuff there, a lot of things that shouldn't be there. But of course, even in the 15 and 1600s, when the Spanish ships were trying to go back to Spain, often a hurricane would hit them, and it would shove them into that area, and they get grounded and never come out. So you can see the remains of some of those.
Yeah, and I tell you, this is really getting interesting here, and we only got about 5 minutes left of the show. But I would say for the people that like what they hear right now, in the beginning of the show, I think you missed the good part, because you need to go back and listen to this show again, because there's some really interesting stuff we start talking about in the beginning. So go to kcorradio.com or find us on YouTube. It'll probably take us a day to get the show up there under Universal Consciousness Show. And otherwise, Greg, talk about your books. You have so many of them. I almost want to ask you, which is the favorite book that you wrote that you had most fun?
Right. Fun, none of them. Really, one called People of the Web. It was fun doing the traveling, because we went to a lot of very weird places for that, and it was that going to the places was fun. But writing has always been work. I've looked at these things because I write professionally in criminal justice. So that when I'm on one of those projects, it's only fun when I'm done. But that's the only way you can get that many books written. You have to see it like it's your job and just do it. The one that I like the most, of all the things I've done, I have a couple books that have sold many, many millions, and those are in criminal justice. But the one that I am most happy with is that Illustrated Encyclopedia of Native American Mounds and Earthworks. It has 1,000 mound sites, and when I say mound sites, I don't mean where there's one mound. They're complexes. Some of them have up to 100 mounds at them, and we went to we went to all those sites. We took photos of them, and that all started with a dream that I had about mounds in 1983, and it started me on a quest to visit Indian mounds, and that's the one that I like more than any other. But the books on Cayce, we have written many books about Cayce and Cayce's work. It's good work. The Cayce organization is a great organization. Check it out at edgarcayce.org. That's my only commercial that I have to give. But it's a pleasure talking to you guys. It really is.
Yeah, we got about 2.5 minutes left, so please let people know where they can reach you. You can find the books and how to connect.
Well, connect Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, it's Gregory L. Put my middle initial in there, Little. Gregory L. Little. Twitter, I'm Dr. Greg Little 2. But you can just search. If you just put my name in Google, you'll see loads of books pop up. Gregory L. Little in Google. You'll see books. You'll see my Twitter and my Facebook. But edgarcayce.org is a way to contact. I'm also at freedomtochange.org, but just Google me. That's probably the best thing to do. Mm-hmm. And as far as books go, you can find them most of them on Google. Not all of them, but most of them.
And you're on Amazon, I suppose?
Most of them are on Amazon. The best-selling books are not on Amazon. Maybe someday we can talk about criminal justice. And most of my books, the only way you're going to get them is you got to be a criminal.
Well, maybe it's criminal to think like that, you know.
Yeah, it might be. Crime does pay. I will say that. But yes, I've been around a long time doing this. I started in the 70s professionally, and it's even hard for me to say what a book is. I have a lot of CDs, a lot of audios out. But like I said, it's a pleasure. You guys are great. Sorry I talked too much. Maybe next time.
We loved it. This was wonderful. There's another show brewing in here, so we're going to call you.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. And you guys, you were listening to Greg Little, and you need to go back and listen to this show again because this was so good about the mysteries of the Americas. Thank you for being with us, and until the next show, be good to each other.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This has been the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly guide to a deeper understanding of the all that we are.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense to very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Live Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, hosts, or their guests, please visit universal-consciousness-show.com. That's universal-consciousness-show.com. Remember, there's a shift coming, a new earthly paradigm, a shift to universal consciousness.
Universal consciousness.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.